We declared them dead with applause. That is how the record begins. The chamber of the Grand Senate shimmered beneath 1,000 suspended light orbs, each one representing a living star system under our governance. When the vote was cast, one orb dimmed, the Sol system, its light fading to archival gray. A species reduced to a footnote, a cautionary tale. Humanity. Catalogued Sol 3 primates. Status: extinct. I remember the faint vibration in the chamber floor as the archive sealed their file, a ceremonial sound, final, irreversible. Around me, delegates exhaled in collective relief. No tears were shed, no silence was observed. They had always unsettled us. Humans were contradictory creatures, capable of orchestral beauty and planetary war within the same generation. Their broadcasts had once filled our translation arrays with music layered over news of bombings. They spoke of peace while sharpening weapons. Statistical projections predicted their collapse long before it came. When their transmissions ceased, we assumed inevitability had merely kept its appointment. Our probes descended through Earth's upper atmosphere weeks later. I reviewed the imagery personally. Continents scarred by wildfire, megacities reduced to skeletal frameworks of carbonized steel, oceans thick with chemical bloom. Radiation signatures spiked across former population centers. No structured signals, no orbital defense grids, no industrial heat signatures. Only wind moving through the ruins. The Council's conclusion was unanimous: self-destruction, an emotional species consuming itself in its adolescence. Tragic, perhaps, but unsurprising. I endorsed the verdict. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful in its death. Clouds drifted over shattered skylines as if trying to hide them. Vegetation crept cautiously across abandoned highways, nature reclaiming a failed experiment. We archived them as civilizations collapsed. And yet, in the cycles that followed, anomalies began to surface. Small at first, easy to ignore. A mining guild vessel reported engine trails near the Kuiper debris field, propulsion signatures inconsistent with any registered Senate fleet. The report was dismissed as sensor echo. Then a Border Patrol frigate stationed at the edge of Sol space transmitted a fragmented distress signal before vanishing from our network. No debris field was found, no energy discharge, simply absence. Pirates, we suggested, or navigational error. I remember arguing that dead species do not launch ambushes. Still, trade routes began diverting around the Sol corridor. Merchant captains spoke of shadows moving between asteroids, of signals that flickered for microseconds before disappearing. Fear is contagious among the lesser systems. We reassured them. Humanity is extinct, we repeated. We believed it. Then the request arrived. It came not through civilian channels, but directly through the Senate's diplomatic corps, a secured lattice used only by recognized sovereign entities. The encryption was primitive by our standards, yet layered with something ingenious. Adaptive code, rewriting itself faster than our decryption protocols could dissect it. The header contained a single identification marker. Species: human. Population status: classified. Request: diplomatic entry. The chamber erupted in amusement. A prank, some claimed, a scavenger faction using human mythology to intimidate trade convoys. I confess I shared their skepticism. Extinction events do not reverse themselves. Planets do not resurrect their dominant predators. And yet, the transmission included coordinates, a vessel approaching under minimal thrust from beyond Pluto's orbit. We permitted docking clearance out of curiosity alone. I attended the reception personally, not from respect, but from a scholar's fascination with imposters. The docking bay doors parted with mechanical indifference. Cold vacuum vented in controlled spirals. Through the observation barrier, I saw the vessel for the first time. It was unmistakably human in design philosophy, angular, modular, layered with external plating that bore scars of atmospheric re-entry. But it was different, reinforced, adapted, engine arrays unfamiliar to our registries. The hatch opened. Atmospheric equalization completed. A single figure stepped forward, bipedal, balanced, unassisted. She wore no ceremonial garments, no emissary regalia. Her attire was functional, armored fabric fused with metallic threads, helmet sealed at her side. Her movements were neither hurried nor hesitant. She walked as if she had every right to exist. Security drones hovered closer, energy lances primed. She did not flinch. When she reached the containment threshold, she lifted her gaze toward us, the assembled representatives of a galaxy that had written her species into history. Her eyes did not carry desperation. They carried assessment. The chamber doors opened. Delegates leaned forward, some in disbelief, others in quiet calculation. I felt something unfamiliar tightening within my thoracic cavity, a sensation I would later identify as doubt. Protocol demanded identification. She spoke before we could cone. Her voice carried across the chamber, imperfect in pronunciation, yet unwavering. Humanity acknowledges your declaration of extinction. A pause. We are here to correct the record. Silence followed, thick, oppressive, electric. In that moment, the archival orb representing soul flickered. Not fully illuminated, not yet, but no longer gray. And as she stepped fully into the Senate chamber, I realized with growing unease that we had not closed Earth's file. We had merely turned the page, and whatever came next would not be a footnote. She did not bow. That was the first disruption. In the Galactic Senate, even conquerors bowed. Even elder species lowered their sensory crests in acknowledgement of collective authority. Protocol was gravity here, inescapable, binding. But when the human female crossed the threshold into our chamber, she inclined her head only slightly, an acknowledgement of presence, not submission. The luminous floor beneath her feet adjusted to her mass, light rippling outward in concentric waves. She moved through it as if through still water. No escort flanked her, no visible weapon hung at her side, yet every security drone in the chamber recalibrated its threat assessment upward. I studied her physiology carefully. Bipedal stance, balanced, efficient. Musculature compact but dense. Dermal surface marked faintly along one cheek, a healed scar. Her attire was unlike the ceremonial uniforms of recognized delegates. It was engineered, woven with metallic filaments that shifted subtly under the chamber lights, armor disguised as fabric. She carried no insignia of rank. She carried certainty. "My designation," began she, voice amplified through the translation lattice, "is Commander Ilara Vance of the United Earth Coalition." The name echoed through the chamber like an error in code. United, Earth, Coalition. These were words that should have belonged to history. A murmur spread among the delegates. I felt irritation rise within me. Not fear, not yet, but intellectual resistance. Civilizations do not reassemble themselves beneath nuclear winter. Species fractured by ideological schism do not unify under rubble. "You stand before the Senate of the Orion Compact," intoned High Counselor Rethkai, his exoskeletal frill expanding in restrained contempt. "Your species was declared extinct by unanimous vote." Commander Vance met his gaze without blinking. "Yes," she said evenly, "we received the notification." A ripple of subdued laughter moved through the chamber. I did not laugh. There was no tremor in her voice, no pleading. She spoke not as a relic seeking mercy, but as an equal correcting misinformation. Humanity was not extinguished. We went underground. The chamber lighting dimmed as she activated a projection device embedded within her gauntlet. A three-dimensional rendering of Earth blossomed above us. Not the scarred wasteland our probes had documented, but a layered cross-section of the planet's crust. Beneath the ruins of cities we believed abandoned, networks glowed. Subterranean habitats, reactor cores, agricultural chambers carved into bedrock. "You bombarded yourselves into oblivion," a delegate from the Vorthian collective hissed. "Your atmosphere collapsed, your oceans acidified." Commander Vance nodded once. "Yes," she said, "we did." The simplicity of that admission unsettled the chamber more than denial would have. She expanded the projection. Historical footage appeared. Human cities descending into chaos, emergency broadcasts, evacuation sirens. Then the footage shifted. Construction crews sealing subterranean vaults, scientists working without sleep, soldiers standing guard not against foreign invaders, but against panic. When surface stability became mathematically improbable, we enacted continuity protocol. Continuity, I repeated quietly to myself. We dismantled competing governments, redirected military expenditure to survival infrastructure. Fusion cores replaced artillery production lines. Agricultural research replaced propaganda networks. The projection zoomed deeper. Children sitting in classrooms carved from stone, illuminated by reactor light. Engineers welding structural supports within cavernous chambers. Hydroponic farms glowing green beneath artificial suns. We lost billions, and for the first time, something tightened in her tone. Not weakness, but weight. But we did not lose all. A senator near me emitted a derisive click. So you hid, he said. You burrowed like prey. Commander Vance turned toward him slowly. Yes, she replied. We did. No defensiveness, no anger. Prey survive, she continued. Pride does not. The chamber fell into an easy silence. She shifted the projection again. New schematics unfolded, starship designs unlike any previously cataloged human model. Compact, modular, engine arrays redesigned for efficiency rather than spectacle. We adapted faster than your extinction models predicted, she said. Isolation accelerated cooperation. Scarcity eliminated ideological luxury. You expect recognition, Counselor Rethkai said, for failing to destroy yourselves completely. No, she answered. Her gaze swept across the chamber, not hostile, not submissive, direct. To re-enter the galaxy as participants. A senator from the Keth Dominion emitted a sharp tonal laugh. Participants. You lack fleets. You lack territory. You lack leverage. Commander Vance tilted her head slightly. Another projection ignited above us. A fleet formation. Not vast, but numerous. Compact vessels arranged in adaptive clusters. Defensive arrays integrated with civilian transports. Manufacturing platforms orbiting beneath asteroid cover. We lack arrogance, not capability. A hush fell over the chamber. Then came the insult. Your species is fragile, emotionally unstable, historically violent. Why should the compact grant legitimacy to a civilization that nearly annihilated itself? Commander Vance did not respond immediately. Instead, she altered the projection one final time. The chamber filled with images, raw, unfiltered. A human child studying engineering schematics by dim reactor light. An elderly woman tending seedlings in nutrient soil, hands cracked from labor. Engineers repairing a fusion conduit with improvised tools, faces illuminated by sparks. No grand speeches, no triumphal music, just endurance. Judge us, she said quietly, not by our collapse. The projection zoomed outward, showing underground cities expanding, connecting, strengthening. Judge us by what rose after. There was no applause, no immediate rebuttal. For the first time in centuries, the Senate chamber felt constrained. The vaulted ceiling seemed lower, the luminous floor less infinite. We had declared them extinct because we believed collapse defined them. But what if collapse had refined them? Counselor Rethkai's frill remained rigid, yet I detected micro-fluctuations in his bioelected field. Uncertainty. You request formal recognition, Counselor Rethkai asked. Yes, she said. And if we refuse? A pause. Not long, but deliberate. Then we proceed without it. No threat in her tone, just inevitability. In that moment, I understood something unsettling. Humanity had not come seeking permission to exist. They had come to inform us that they already did. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the Senate entered deliberation mode. Delegates exchanged encrypted signals. Calculations raced through strategic simulations. And throughout it all, Commander Ilara Vance stood alone at the center of the chamber, unmoved, unguarded, unafraid. a survivor. But survivors, I was beginning to suspect, are rarely content with mere endurance. As deliberations began, a priority alert pulsed across my internal display, originating from the Outer Rim monitoring network. Anomalous gravitational readings, beyond Sol, approaching. I looked from the alert to the human standing beneath our lights, and for the first time I wondered whether her arrival was coincidence or warning. We thought she came for recognition. We were wrong. The alert pulsing across my internal display did not fade as deliberations began. It intensified, priority escalation from the Outer Rim array, gravitational shear, stellar fluctuation, energy signatures inconsistent with known phenomena. Before the High Council could silence the chamber for private discourse, Commander Ilara Vance spoke again. "You should take that alert," she said calmly. Every gaze turned toward her. Counselor Rethkai's frill flared in irritation. "You presume—" "It's not random," she interrupted. Not loudly, not aggressively, simply certain. It's them. A subtle shift passed through the chamber. The word meant nothing to us. "Clarify," I demanded. She lifted her gauntlet once more. The projection that blossomed above us was not Earth this time. It was of darkness. At first I thought the display malfunctioned, an empty star field beyond the galactic rim. Then I saw it, a region where stars should have burned, but did not. An absence shaped with intention. We detected it 23 of your standard cycles ago, beyond Pluto's heliopause. At first we believed it to be instrumentation error. The projection zoomed inward. Archived telemetry scrolled beside it, ancient, fragmented, human in origin. Then our deep space probes stopped transmitting. She overlaid Senate astronomical charts atop the human data. The alignment was precise. "We have recorded stellar collapse events in peripheral regions before," Counselor Rethkai said, attempting composure. "Supernovae, gravitational instabilities, dark matter anomalies." Commander Vance nodded once. "Yes," she said, "that's what we thought too." The projection shifted again. A star system, unfamiliar, unclaimed, rendered in luminous detail. Its primary star burned a steady yellow. Then time accelerated. A distortion rippled through space like a wound opening. Structures, vast, geometric, impossible, slid into orbit around the star. Not ships, harvesters. Filaments extended from them, luminous and precise. They pierced the star's outer layers, drawing plasma in controlled torrents. The star dimmed. Not explosively, not violently, deliberately. "It consumes stellar output," she said. "Not for colonization, not for conquest, for fuel." The chamber was silent now. I felt my secondary heart begin to accelerate. "This footage is fabricated," hissed the Vorthian delegate. "Humans have a history of dramatization." Commander Vance did not respond to the insult. Instead, she altered the feed to raw sensor telemetry, gravitational lensing data, neutrino flux curves, radiation decay curves. I recognized the mathematics immediately. It was real. "We cross-referenced our observations with archival Senate data," she continued. "There are at least 11 recorded anomalous stellar fade events over the past 3 centuries. The projection highlighted them one by one, each event previously categorized as natural collapse. They form a trajectory," she said, a line traced across the galactic map. It was moving inward, toward us. Murmurs rose again, but this time not amused. "You expect us to believe," Counselor Rethkai said slowly, "that an extragalactic intelligence is migrating through interstellar space, harvesting stars, and that only humanity noticed?" "Yes," she replied. The simplicity of her answer was infuriating. "And how," I asked carefully, "did your species survive first contact with such an entity?" Her gaze shifted toward me again. "We didn't." The projection changed. Human vessels, sleeker than those displayed earlier, emerged near the outer boundary of Sol space, a scouting formation. Their engines burned bright against the void. "We sent a reconnaissance fleet to investigate anomalous readings beyond Pluto. 16 ships." The footage trembled. Combat telemetry, distorted by gravitational interference. The darkness moved. Not a single construct this time, but fragments, probes perhaps, autonomous. They did not fire conventional weapons. Space itself twisted. One human vessel crumpled inward, hull folding as if crushed by invisible pressure. Another disintegrated in a flare of radiation. Gasps, audible, uncontrolled, escaped several delegates. They attempted direct engagement, she said. Our weapons were ineffective, their defenses adaptive. On screen, a human cruiser accelerated toward one of the constructs, not away. Retreat was the logical option, she continued. We chose observation. Observation. I watched as a damaged human vessel deliberately altered its vector, skimming dangerously close to one of the harvest constructs. Data streams flooded from its hull, active scanning, signal mapping. They were mapping its energy harmonics, testing response thresholds. They were dying, I said quietly. Yes. The word landed like debris. 8 ships were destroyed in the first engagement. 4 more were lost covering retreat. The footage shifted to the final phase. A civilian convoy, colony transports returning from asteroid mining operations, drifted directly into the path of the encroaching constructs. The human fleet, what remained of it, repositioned instantly. They could have disengaged, she said, saved the remaining warships.
Instead, the surviving vessels formed a defensive arc around the convoy. Engines flared beyond recommended output. Hull temperatures spiked into catastrophic range. Enemy constructs advanced, gravitational distortions rippling outward. Human ships held formation. One by one, their shields failed. One by one, they fell. But the convoy, slow, fragile, filled with civilians, slipped past the engagement zone and accelerated toward Inner Sol. They lost half their fleet, I murmured. They saved every civilian vessel, she corrected softly. The final recording ended not with triumph, but with static and a single transmission, cracked, human, steady despite background alarms. Convoy clear. The chamber remained utterly silent. Even the ambient hum of the Senate's environmental systems seemed muted. Councillor Rethguy's Frel had flattened entirely. You believe this intelligence is approaching compact territory, he said. We are certain, she replied. Its trajectory aligns with your outer colonies. A tremor passed through my limbs. 12 cycles. We were not prepared for war on that scale. The Vorthian delegate demanded, though the defiance in his tone had thinned. Commander Vance met the collective gaze of the chamber. Yes, she said. Her expression did not change. Adaptation, she said. Decentralized fleets, dynamic shield modulation, someone whispered. Her eyes hardened, not cruel, not eager, resolute. We learned resilience the hard way, she said. The projection faded, leaving only the dimmed orb of Sol suspended above us, no longer gray, not fully illuminated, flickering between states. For the first time since humanity reappeared, the fear in the chamber was no longer directed at them. It was directed outward, toward the rim. Another alert pulsed across my internal display, this time from a Senate observatory station near the Ondar expanse. Stellar output decline detected, unnatural, accelerating. I felt the weight of our previous arrogance settle like gravity upon my exoskeleton. We had declared one species extinct because we mistook silence for weakness. Now silence was spreading across the stars themselves. Councillor Rethguy turned slowly toward Commander Vance. You are right, she did not correct him. She did not soften the truth. Yes, she said. A pause. And as the chamber lights dimmed in emergency response mode, I understood that humanity had not walked into our Senate seeking validation. They had come to warn us that something far worse than humans was coming, and it was already closer than we thought. We demanded proof, not because we doubted the coming darkness, but because we still doubted them. The High Council announced a joint military exercise within the Proxima War Sphere, an artificial battle space used to test fleet doctrine. Publicly, it was framed as evaluation. Privately, it was designed as exposure. If humanity wished recognition, they would earn it under our scrutiny.
Commander Ilara Vance accepted before the terms were fully transmitted. No negotiation, no hesitation. The Senate fleets assembled in immaculate formation, tiered shield matrices overlapping in disciplined geometry. Capital ships anchored the center. Interceptors flanked in perfect symmetry. Plasma arrays synchronized down to microsecond intervals.
It was beautiful. It was predictable. The human fleet entered late. Smaller vessels, modular hulls, uneven spacing. No grand flagship, no ceremonial alignment. The signal to begin flashed. We advanced as doctrine dictated. Layered barrages, coordinated arcs of plasma fire, shield harmonics calibrated for maximum deflection efficiency. The humans broke formation within minutes. They scattered. At first, I felt vindicated. Their line dissolved into fragments. Vessels darted in seemingly random vectors, retreating, looping, vanishing behind debris clusters within the sphere. Disorganized, one admiral muttered. Then our outer flank collapsed. Human ships exploited gravitational eddies near the sphere's artificial mass nodes. Currents our simulations treated as negligible. They used debris as cover, cutting engine signatures mid-burn, reappearing at impossible angles. Their communications were not centralized. There was no single command vessel to target. Micro-decisions rippled across their fleet, adaptive, independent. They did not hold territory. They eroded certainty. Our cruisers attempted to tighten formation. That was the mistake. Human vessels feigned retreat, drawing 2 defense wings out of alignment. A cluster of smaller craft slipped through the gap, bypassing heavy ships entirely and targeting command relays. Within 17 simulation minutes, our shield network desynchronized. Within 22, 3 core world defense nodes were marked as compromised. The sphere fell silent. Simulation terminated. In the observation chamber, no one spoke. Admiral Kapvar demanded, bioelectric field flickering with disbelief. They were outmatched in tonnage, outranged. Commander Vance stood beside the tactical display, studying the aftermath without triumph. "We stopped fighting for victory," she said quietly. The Admiral turned to her. She met his gaze. "You fight to win decisively, to dominate the field." A pause. "Tiva." Silence deepened. She gestured to the replay. "You assume order under pressure. We assume collapse." The realization settled slowly across the chamber. They had not been reckless. They had been conditioned. Conditioned by planetary failure, by fleet annihilation, by first contact with something that consumed stars. Arrogance cracked that day, not shattered, but fractured enough to let doubt seep in. Humanity did not fear losing formation. They expected it. And somehow, they continued anyway. As the Proxima War sphere powered down, a new alert pulsed across the strategic network, outer colony, and our expanse. Stellar output dropping, faster this time. The exercise had been a test.
The real battle, it seemed, would not allow rehearsal. The first colony did not send a distress call. It simply vanished. One moment, the star of Kethra Minor burned steady on our displays. The next, its output began to fall. Not violently, not catastrophically, just steadily. Within a single orbital cycle, the system collapsed into gravitational distortion. Where a sun had burned for 4 billion cycles, there was only absence. Panic is rarely visible in the Senate. That day, it was audible. Emergency convocations overlapped. Defense fleets scrambled without unified command. Civilian transports jammed communication channels. The phrase extinction-level threat, once theoretical, circulated openly. We had predicted 12 cycles. We were given 3. Before the High Council issued formal mobilization orders, human fleets were already in motion. Commander Ilara Vance did not request authorization. She transmitted battle formations directly into compact tactical networks, adaptive clusters, decentralized command nodes, shield modulation algorithms derived from their first encounter beyond Pluto. Some delegates called it insubordination. It was salvation. The enemy constructs emerged at the edge of the Ondar expanse, vast geometric harvesters surrounded by smaller biomechanical escorts. They moved with silent precision, filaments unfolding toward Ondar's primary star. Senate fleets arrived in textbook formation. They fired first. Plasma barrages struck the outer constructs and dispersed harmlessly along refracted energy lattices. Shield harmonics calibrated for conventional warfare failed to penetrate. Our confidence fractured in real time. Hentra came the first broadcast. Energy absorption increasing. Signal lost. Human vessels did not maintain formation. They surged forward in irregular vectors,
broadcasting live recalibration data across open channels. Shift to variable frequency sweep, a human engineer transmitted. Cycle every 2 seconds. Their ships adjusted mid-battle, shield signatures fluctuating unpredictably. Senate captains hesitated, then followed. The first construct faltered, not destroyed, but disrupted. Hope ignited, brief and fragile. Then the harvesters accelerated. Gravitational distortions rippled outward, warping local space. 2 Senate cruisers folded inward, hulls collapsing like crushed metal. Human capital ship Resolute Dawn altered course. It did not retreat. It increased thrust beyond safe tolerance and drove directly into the path of a harvester's filament array. Collision course confirmed, its captain reported calmly. The impact lit the void. The harvester staggered, extraction beam destabilized. The Resolute Dawn disintegrated. No scream, no static, only silence. Human volunteer wings executed what they called suicide burns, micro-jumps into unstable spatial corridors created by the enemy's gravitational manipulation. Their detonations collapsed those corridors, delaying reinforcement constructs.
Every loss was broadcast openly. No censorship, no panic, just voices, steady, resolute. I observed from high orbit aboard a Senate command vessel as an evacuation convoy, transports filled with Andar civilians, attempted to flee the system. Enemy escorts broke through our fractured defensive grid. One human cruiser, hull already breached along its port side, repositioned between the convoy and the advancing constructs. Its shields were failing. It remained. Evacuation vector clear, the cruiser's commander transmitted to the fleeing transports. Maintain thrust. Enemy fire struck its aft section. Armor vaporized. Internal explosions blossomed along its spine. It did not move. Those civilians, beings who had voted months earlier to deny humanity recognition, escaped because a human vessel absorbed the fire meant for them. When the cruiser finally fractured apart, its debris field drifted like a silent memorial. By the time reinforcements from 3 compact sectors converged, the first wave of harvesters began to withdraw. Not destroyed, not defeated, but slowed. The star of Andar flickered, damaged, but burning. In the Senate chamber, no one celebrated. We watched casualty reports scroll across shared displays. Human losses, catastrophic. Senate losses, severe. Civilian survival rate, unprecedented. They're retreating, an analyst whispered. Commander Vance stood at the center of the chamber, armor scorched from remote command relay feedback, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. They're adapting, she corrected. Counselor Rethkai turned toward her slowly. She considered the question. Because we made it expensive, she said. Not victorious, not triumphant. Expensive. We had not overwhelmed the extragalactic intelligence. We had not outmatched it. We had simply refused to yield. In the quiet that followed, I felt something shift permanently within the chamber. Fear remained, but it was no longer directed at the human species standing among us. It was directed at the darkness pressing inward from the rim. And for the first time in galactic history, the Senate fell silent, not from arrogance, but from respect. Across the tactical display, long-range sensors detected renewed distortions beyond Andar. The second wave was already forming. This war, I realized, had not truly begun, and humanity, once pronounced dead, was standing at its front. We had spent centuries perfecting division, trade blocs, defense pacts, strategic rivalries disguised as diplomacy. We called it balance. Humanity called it waste. After Andar, something unprecedented occurred within the Sand Chamber. We listened. Alliances once drafted in theory became tangible reality. The Vorthian shield matrices were shared openly with the Keth Dominion. The Talaran compulsion guilds transmitted engine schematics without encryption locks. Even the isolationist Meyer enclaves opened their research vaults. And at the center of it, unexpectedly, stood humanity. Not commanding, connecting.
Shipyards that had once produced luxury cruisers began assembling hybrid war vessels. Alien hull architecture fused with human modular reinforcement. Senate shield harmonics layered with unpredictable frequency modulation derived from Sol's first encounter. Civilian industries converted overnight. Agricultural processors became ration fabricators. Mining platforms retooled into weapons foundries.
It mirrored what humans had described beneath Earth's surface, war economies born from extinction pressure. Commander Elara Vance was offered supreme tactical authority by emergency vote. She declined. There was no theatrical humility in her refusal. It was strategic. Decentralized command had saved humanity once. Now it would save us. The second invasion wave emerged broader than the first, multiple harvest constructs flanked by escort lattices stretching across light minutes of space. Entire constellations dimmed at their approach. This time, we were waiting. Hybrid fleets assembled near the Andar Gate, a narrow stellar corridor bordered by a volatile binary system. Human analysts had identified it as a potential choke point using disaster simulations originally designed for asteroid impact scenarios. "You're planning to weaponize a star," I said when I reviewed the proposal. Commander Vance met my gaze. "We're planning to inconvenience them," she replied. The engagement began with coordinated precision unlike anything the compact had previously achieved. Vorthian capital ships anchored the defensive line, shields cycling unpredictably per human algorithm. Keth interceptors darted between formations, guided by adaptive microcommands. Human vessels, smaller, faster, moved through gravitational eddies as if born to chaos. The harvesters advanced, filaments extended toward Andar's recovering star. We struck first, targeting escorts rather than primary constructs, a tactic humanity had insisted upon. "Disrupt the hands," Vance had said. Enemy response was immediate. Gravitational distortions rippled outward, tearing apart 2 coalition cruisers. Casualty reports spiked, but formations did not collapse, they flexed. Human command nodes redistributed targeting data in real time. When one flagship fell, 3 smaller vessels absorbed its coordination role without pause. The binary stars near the gate began to destabilize under sustained energy discharge, exactly as planned. Phase 2, Vance transmitted. Coalition fleets executed a controlled retreat, drawing the primary harvest construct deeper into the corridor between the twin stars. To an outside observer, it might have looked like desperation. It was choreography. At a calculated threshold, human volunteer wings performed synchronized microjumps along pre-mapped vectors, deploying gravitational amplifiers salvaged from mining arrays. The binary star's orbital balance shifted. For a moment, one impossible, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the corridor collapsed.
A tidal surge of stellar plasma and gravitational shear erupted between the twin suns, engulfing the central harvest construct. Space itself seemed to fracture. When the flare subsided, one of the primary constructs was gone. Not driven back, not delayed, destroyed. The Senate chamber, observing from across secure relay networks, remained silent in stunned disbelief. We had never annihilated one before. The cost was severe. Entire wings of coalition ships lost to the cascade. Human volunteer squadrons reduced to debris fields. But for the first time, the extragalactic force did not advance immediately. It hesitated. Long-range sensors recorded altered movement patterns, slower incursions, expanded defensive spacing. "They're adapting," I said quietly. Commander Vance nodded. Losses continued across peripheral sectors. Constellations darkened despite our resistance. Entire systems evacuated and abandoned. Yet for every system taken, 2 more were fortified using lessons from the last engagement. We stopped reacting. We began anticipating. Hope, an emotion once considered inefficient within Senate strategic doctrine, spread quietly through command networks. Not naive optimism, measured confidence, the realization that extinction was no longer inevitable. I walked through the Senate chamber cycles after the Andar Gate engagement and observed something I had not seen in my lifetime. Delegates from rival species standing side by side, reviewing shared tactical displays without territorial dispute. Human officers conferring with Vorthian engineers as equals. The orb of soul burned fully now, no longer flickering between life and death. "We learned this from them," I confessed privately to Counselor Rethkai. He did not deny it. The extragalactic force remained vast, unfathomable, still capable of erasing stars. But for the first time since their arrival, their advance slowed measurably. Not halted, slowed. Because the galaxy, fractured and arrogant for centuries, had chosen unity over pride. And that choice, astonishingly, had been inspired by the species we once pronounced dead. As long-range sensors detected the enemy repositioning beyond the gate, Commander Vance stood watching the data scroll across her display. "They'll change tactics," I said. "They always do," she replied. A pause. And in her certainty, I felt something unfamiliar settle within me. Not fear, not merely respect, but belief. I expected ruins. What I found
was restraint. After the turning point at Andar Gate, after the enemy's advance slowed, and the galaxy exhaled for the first time in cycles, I requested passage to Sol. Not as overseer, not as judge, as witness. Earth emerged from warp beneath a pale blue glow, its atmosphere thinner than archived records, yet stable. Scars still marked its continents, vast stretches of darkened terrain where cities once stood. But between those scars, green spread in deliberate geometry. Forests, planted in patterns visible even from orbit.
Oceans shimmered, not pristine, but healing. Commander Elara Vance met me planetside. No ceremonial escort, no defensive display, only open sky, reconstructed through atmospheric regulators that hovered like distant stars. "You expected a graveyard," she said. "Yes," I admitted. We walked through what had once been a coastal megacity. The skeletal frames of ancient towers remained, preserved intentionally. Around them, new structures rose, low, efficient, integrated with reclaimed stone and alloy. Children moved between them freely. They laughed. The sound was disarming. No fear of bombardment, no drills echoing through underground corridors, just life above ground. "You declared us dead," Vance said as we approached a wide plaza forged from metal. There was no accusation in her tone. At the center of the plaza stood a memorial constructed from melted weapons, human artillery, alien hull fragments, shattered harvest filaments recovered from battlefields. The alloy had been reshaped into a curved wall encircling a quiet garden. Names were etched along its surface. Human, Vorthian, Keth. Species that had once distrusted one another now carved together into permanence. "You honor alien dead here?" I observed. "They stood with us," she replied. "Or we stood with them." Wind moved gently through newly planted trees, their leaves engineered for rapid carbon absorption. Above us, orbital platforms shimmered, vast construction arrays assembling vessels in silence. Not warships, exploration craft. Their hulls lacked heavy weapon protrusions. Their silhouettes were open, forward-leaning. "You rebuild quickly," I said. "We always have," she answered. I turned toward her fully then, the question forming not as accusation, but as confusion. Why fight for a galaxy that declared your extinction, that doubted you? She studied the memorial wall for a long moment before replying. "We returned." The words were simple, unadorned, yet they unsettled me more than any battle footage. "You could have remained hidden," I pressed. "Yes," she said. A pause. "We were united." I understood then. Isolation had nearly ended humanity once. Unity had restored it. In the distance, a newly completed exploration vessel ignited its engines softly, ascending through recovering skies toward orbit. Not conquest, not expansion by force. Discovery. Humanity had not returned to demand dominance within the compact. They had returned to stand with it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, an unharvested, fiercely burning star, I realized something profound. We had once mistaken their emotion for weakness, but it was their refusal to stand alone that made them dangerous to extinction itself. And as Earth's light faded into evening, I wondered what the galaxy might become, now that we walked forward together. We convened once more beneath the 1,000 suspended orbs of the Grand Senate, but this time none dimmed. The Sol system burned at full luminosity among them, no longer gray, no longer flickering between life and death. Its light held steady, unapologetic. Years had passed since the Andar Gate. The harvesters beyond the rim had not vanished, but they had withdrawn, repositioning into deeper dark. Whether deterred by resistance or recalculating for something worse, we could not determine. What mattered was this: we still existed, and so did they. The session was called not for emergency mobilization, nor for strategic debate. It was called to amend the record. I stood at my designated tier as Commander Elara Vance entered the chamber once again. She wore no armor now, only a formal uniform bearing the insignia of the United Earth Coalition and the newly forged emblem of the Galactic Compact. She bowed this time, not in submission, in acknowledgement. The High Council addressed the assembly. No dissent followed. No murmured hesitation. Only agreement. The words would be inscribed into law. Humanity would no longer stand at the threshold of galactic society. They would stand within it. There remained one final procedural matter. The prior extinction declaration, Rethkai continued, will be removed from the public record. A simple amendment, a quiet erasure of our arrogance. Commander Vance stepped forward. "Leave it," she said. The chamber stilled. Rethkai tilted his cranial crest. "Leave the extinction declaration intact," she repeated. A ripple of confusion moved through the delegates. "You were misclassified," I said before I could restrain myself. "Yes," she agreed calmly. Her gaze traveled upward toward the illuminated orb of Sol. "Because it's true," she said. A pause. The chamber absorbed the weight of that admission. "But we rose," she finished. "No anger, no accusation, only fact. Let the record show both," she continued. "That we fell." Silence deepened, not uncomfortable, but reflective. In that moment, I understood that history, to humans, was not something to sanitize. It was something to survive. The vote to preserve the extinction record passed without opposition. And so the archive now contains 2 consecutive entries under humanity. Declared extinct. Status reinstated. In the cycles that followed, the galaxy changed in ways more profound than fleet compositions or defense grids. Joint academies formed, where human officers lectured on adaptive survival doctrine alongside Forthian shield theorists. Compact shipyards standardized decentralized command systems derived from Earth's underground networks. We once studied humanity as a volatile anomaly. Now we study them as architects of resilience. The extragalactic threat remains beyond the rim. Long-range probes still detect faint distortions in the dark between galaxies. We do not know if it retreats permanently or prepares for return, but we no longer face that uncertainty divided. Trade routes once guarded by suspicion now operate under shared defense.
Research once hoarded now circulates freely. Arrogance, our oldest flaw, has been tempered, not erased, tempered. I record this not as propaganda, not as flattery, but as confession. When humanity first walked into this chamber, we expected a relic, an echo of a species too emotional to endure its own mistakes. Instead, we witnessed a beginning. They did not ask to lead, they chose to stand. They did not deny their collapse, they built upon it. And perhaps that is what unsettles me most. Extinction, I have learned, is not always the end of a species. Sometimes it is the crucible that forges it into something stronger. As I conclude this record, I look once more at the suspended orbs above the Senate floor. They shine brighter now, not because the stars themselves have changed, but because we guard them together. Should the darkness beyond the rim surge inward again, should stars begin to dim under foreign harvest, I know which species will step forward first. Not because they are fearless, not because they are flawless, but because they remember what it means to fall, and to rise anyway.